The stars were quiet, and the Zephyrians liked it that way. For 3,000 years, they had ruled the galaxy with gentle hands. Their crystal cities floated between the stars like beautiful dreams. Tall, thin aliens moved through there, gleaning halls with grace, their bodies made of living light and crystal. High, Commander Zelenoth stood on the observation deck of the greatest city, watching the endless dance of distant suns. His crystal form pulsed with soft blue light as he reviewed the latest survey reports. World after world showed the same thing: empty planets with nothing but simple life forms. Bacteria, plants, maybe some primitive animals, but no real intelligence. Anywhere, another dead system, he said to his aide, the light in his body dimming with disappointment. Sector 7751 shows no signs of advanced civilization, just more rocks floating in space. The Zephyrians believed they were special. They had searched for thousands of years and found no other species that could build cities, create art, or reach. For the stars, this made them feel both proud and lonely. They were the only thinking beings in a vast, empty universe, far away in a small yellow star system. Jake Morrison checked his instruments for the third time that morning. The human pilot sat in the cramped cockpit of his patrol ship, the Aurora. His dark hair was getting too long, and his uniform needed washing. But those things did not matter out here, in the black void of space. Jake was 28 years old and had been flying patrol missions for 5 years. Earth had only learned to travel faster than light 30 years ago. Now humans had spread to 12 different worlds, building colonies and mining stations wherever they could find resources. Control, this is Aurora on routine patrol. Jake spoke into his radio. Sector 12 is clear. No contacts, no problems. Copy that, Aurora, came the reply from the orbital station. Continue patrol pattern and report in 4 hours. Jake stretched in his seat and looked out at the stars. Earth was 60 light years behind him, but he could not see it from here. Sometimes he wondered what else might be out there. Humans had found no other intelligent life yet, but the galaxy was huge. Surely they could not be alone. He was wrong about being alone, but he was also right. The Zephyrians had noticed humans when they first began traveling between stars. Their crystal ships had watched from a distance as crude human vessels struggled through space. Primitive was the word in the Zephyrian reports. Basic tool users with simple technology. Possibly worth monitoring, but no immediate concern. The crystal beings saw humans the way humans might see ants building a hill. Interesting, perhaps, but not important. The Zephyrians had technology that could cross the galaxy in days. They could reshape matter with their thoughts and lived for thousands of years. What could these short-lived creatures with their metal ships possibly teach them? But something else had been watching too. Deep in the dark heart of the galaxy, ancient things stirred. The Devourers had slept for a long time, digesting their last great meal. They were not like the Zephyrians or humans. They were hunger itself, given form and purpose. The Devourer ships looked like living things because they were living things. Massive creatures bred for war and consumption, with hulls that pulsed like heartbeats and weapons that grew from there. Flesh. They had eaten entire civilizations before, leaving behind only empty worlds and silence. For millions of years, the Devourers had followed the same pattern. They would sleep until they grew hungry, then wake to consume whatever intelligence they could find. The Zephyrians, with their energy-rich bodies and advanced technology, had always been the perfect meal. The first signs of their awakening were subtle. Deep space sensors detected strange signals from the galactic core. Ships that ventured too close to that region simply disappeared. But these warnings went unnoticed. The Zephyrians were too comfortable in their peaceful existence to worry about old legends and ghost stories. Jake finished his patrol and headed back toward the colony world of New Boston. The planet was small and cold, but it had good mineral deposits. 3,000 humans lived there, mining rare metals and sending them back to Earth. As Jake brought his ship down through the atmosphere, he saw the lights of the colony spread. Out below him, like scattered jewels docked in the spaceport, he met with Captain Lisa Parker, who commanded the system defense cruiser Defiance. Lisa was a few years older than Jake, with short red hair and sharp green eyes. She had been his instructor at the academy back on Earth. "Any trouble out there?" she asked as they walked toward the bar. "Nothing but rocks and empty space," Jake replied. "Sometimes I wonder why we bother with these patrols. If there was anything dangerous out here, we would have found it by now." Lisa laughed, but there was something worried in her eyes. "Maybe that is the problem. We keep expecting to find danger, but what if danger finds us first?" She had been studying the deep space sensor readings. There were patterns in the data that troubled her, signals that seemed almost like a language, but not quite. Her reports to Earth Command had been filed away with all the other routine paperwork. That night, Jake lay in his small quarters on the Aurora and stared up at the ceiling. Through his tiny window, he could see the stars of the Milky Way stretching across the darkness. Somewhere out there, crystal beings floated in their cities of light, believing they were alone. Somewhere else, ancient hungers were stirring, preparing for the greatest feast in galactic history. But Jake knew none of this. He was just a pilot doing his job, keeping watch over a small corner of human space. He did not know that sensors were already detecting the first Devourer scout ships emerging from the galactic core. He did not know that the peaceful galaxy was about to become a battleground dot in his dreams that night. Jake flew through endless fields of stars, searching for something he could not name. Behind him, something vast and hungry followed, getting closer with each passing moment. But when he woke the next morning, he forgot the dream and prepared for another routine patrol. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the storm that was coming. The Zephyrians continued their elegant dances among the stars. Humans continued their simple expansion into nearby systems. And in the dark between the stars, ships the size of moons began their slow journey toward the light. Nobody was ready for what was about to happen. Nobody could be ready for the Devourers. Jake Morrison was drinking coffee in the Aurora's cockpit when his ship's warning system started screaming. The patrol ship shook as massive energy readings flooded the sensors. Jake spilled hot coffee on his uniform as he grabbed the controls and tried to understand what he was seeing. The scanner showed ships approaching from deep space. But these were not normal ships. They were huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Some were the size of cities. Others looked like floating mountains with weapons bristling from their surfaces. "Control, this is Aurora," Jake called into his radio, his voice tight with fear. "I'm reading massive contacts coming in from the galactic core. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands," Static answered him. The communication channels were filling with interference. 200 light-years away, the first Devourer ships reached the outer edge of Zephyrian space. The crystal beings had built their cities to be beautiful, not to fight wars. Their graceful towers and floating platforms were works of art, not fortresses. High. Commander Zelenoff was in a council meeting when the alarms began. The crystal walls of the chamber pulsed with urgent red light. Through the transparent floor, he could see Devourer bioships rising from the darkness like nightmares made real. "Impossible," he whispered, his crystal body flickering with shock. "The old stories, the Devourers, they cannot be real." But they were real, and they were hungry. The first crystal city died in minutes. The Devourer ships wrapped around it like massive snakes, their living hulls pulsing as they fed. The beautiful crystal structures cracked and dissolved, absorbed into the alien biomass. 10 million Zephyrians lived in that city. Within an hour, they were gone. Jake watched in horror as his long-range sensors picked up the destruction. Entire star systems were going dark as the Devourer swarm swept through them. The signals were faint at this distance, but clear enough to show the scale of the disaster. He tried to contact Earth, but the communication networks were breaking down. Ships throughout human space were reporting the same thing: massive alien vessels approaching at impossible speeds. The colonial governments were ordering all civilians to evacuate, but there was nowhere to run. The mining colony at Proxima Centauri sent out a desperate message before falling silent. "They're not ships," the transmission said. "They're alive. God help us. They're eating everything." Captain Lisa Parker received Jake's emergency signal while her cruiser Defiance was docked at New Boston. She had been preparing for a routine supply run, but now she was loading every weapon the colony could spare. Her crew of 40 was scared, but ready to fight. "Jake, where are you?" She called over the radio. "Still on patrol near the Kepler system." Jake replied, "Lisa, these things are huge. Our weapons won't even scratch them." "We have to try," Lisa said, but her voice shook with doubt. The Devourer swarm hit human space like a plague. Their bioships moved with purpose, heading straight for the most populated worlds. Earth's orbital defenses opened fire as soon as the aliens came within range, but the plasma cannons and missile batteries might as well have been throwing rocks. The Devourer ships absorbed the energy weapons and grew stronger. Nuclear warheads exploded against their hulls without leaving a mark. The bioarmor adapted to each attack, learning and changing to become more resistant. Jake watched from his hiding place in an asteroid field as the great cities of Earth were consumed. New York disappeared beneath a mass of writhing alien flesh. London's lights went out as the power grid was devoured. Tokyo burned as bioships landed in the streets and began harvesting everything they could find. The screams came through the emergency channels, billions of voices crying out as their world was eaten alive. Jake turned off his radio because he could not bear to listen anymore, but the Zephyrians were suffering even worse. Their energy-based technology made them perfect food for the Devourers. Every crystal city that fell made the bioships stronger and hungrier. High Commander Zelenoff fled from system to system, watching his people die. "We were wrong," he transmitted to the few surviving Zephyrian commanders. "We are not alone in the universe. And we are not the strongest." The Devourers had waited millions of years for this moment. They had bred and evolved and prepared. Their bioships could adapt to any weapon, heal from any wound, and feed on any form of energy. They were the perfect predators, and the galaxy was their hunting ground. Jake tried to reach other human ships, but most had been destroyed or scattered. The few survivors were hiding like he was, afraid to use their engines or weapons because the Devourers might detect them. Captain Ben Carter, flying a fighter escort near Mars, managed to get one message through before his ship was caught. "They're coordinated," he said, "all of them moving together like parts of one big creature. If we could disrupt that somehow, ... The transmission cut off as Carter's fighter was consumed by a Devourer scout ship. Jake felt completely alone as he watched his species die. Earth was a burning wreck. The colonies were silent. The proud human fleet was scattered wreckage floating in space. In just 3 days, an entire civilization had been nearly wiped out. But Jake was not the only survivor. Hidden throughout the galaxy, small groups of humans and Zephyrians were learning the same terrible truth. The Devourers were not just random monsters. They were an ancient force that had done this before, many times, to many different species. Bioships pulsed with dark purpose as they fed on the remains of 2 civilizations. But their hunger was never satisfied. They would consume everything in the galaxy if they could, leaving behind only empty space and silence. Jake Morrison, hiding in his small patrol ship among dead rocks, was one of the few left to remember what the galaxy had been like before the swarm came. He did not know it yet, but he and the other survivors would have to find a way to fight back, or watch everything they loved disappear forever. Jake Morrison had been hiding in the asteroid belt for 6 days. His ship's food was running low, and the recycled air tasted stale. Through his small window, he could see the burned remains of Earth floating in the distance. The blue and green world he had called home was now a blackened rock. His crew of 12 was scared and angry. Chief Engineer Danny Walsh kept checking the engines, looking for something to fix. Pilot Kate Murphy stared at the empty communication channels, hoping to hear another human voice. But space was mostly quiet now, except for the strange sounds the devourer ships made as they fed. "Sir, we can't stay here much longer," Danny said. "Fuel is at 20%. Life support will fail in 3 days." Jake nodded, but said nothing. Where could they go? Every human world was either destroyed or under attack. The colonies that had taken decades to build were gone in less than a week. Then something unexpected happened. Jake's radio crackled with a signal. Not human words, but something else. Musical tones that seemed to form patterns. He had never heard anything like it before. "What is that?" Kate asked. Jake adjusted the frequency, and the signal became clearer. The musical tones were definitely a language, but not made by human voices. Someone else was out there, someone who had survived the attack. High Counselor Veltar floated in the ruins of her research station, her crystal body dim with grief. She was one of the last surviving Zephyrian leaders. Around her, the remains of her people's greatest civilization drifted in space, like broken glass. But she had detected something interesting. Human ships were still fighting, while Zephyrian energy weapons had proven useless against the Devourers. These primitive creatures were actually hurting the Biodash ships. She had watched a human destroyer called the Hammer attack a Devourer cruiser. The ship was small and crude compared to Zephyrian technology, but its simple metal projectiles punched through the bio-armor like it was paper. The Devourer ship had actually retreated, something Veltar had never seen before. "Impossible," she whispered in her musical language. "How can their primitive weapons succeed where ours have failed?" The answer was simple but surprising. The Devourers had evolved to absorb and feed on energy-based attacks. Their bio-armor could adapt to plasma, lasers, and particle beams. But crude kinetic weapons like bullets and missiles were something they had not expected. Physical impacts delivered at high speed could still damage them. Jake picked up more signals as his ship drifted through the debris field. Some were human voices calling for help. Others were the strange musical tones of the alien species. Slowly, he began to realize that humanity was not alone in this fight. Captain Lisa Parker was still alive, commanding a small group of surviving ships near the Jupiter mining stations. She had gathered 18 vessels, everything from military cruisers to civilian cargo haulers. Her crew was exhausted and low on supplies, but they were still fighting. "Jake, is that really you?" Lisa's voice came through the static when he finally made contact. "It's me," Jake replied, relief flooding through him. "I thought everyone was dead." "Not dead yet," Lisa said grimly. "But we will be soon if we don't do something crazy. I have a plan, but it's probably suicide." Lisa had been studying the Devourer bioships for days, looking for weaknesses. She noticed that they were all connected somehow, sharing information through some kind of network. If she could damage the largest ship, the command vessel, it might disrupt the others. Her plan was simple and desperate. She would load her cruiser Defiance with every explosive they had and ram it directly into the heart of the biggest Devourer ship. The fusion reactor would be set to overload on impact, creating an explosion bigger than 100 nuclear bombs. "You can't do this alone," Jake said when she explained the plan. "I won't be alone," Lisa replied. "Every ship we have left will attack at the same time. We'll hit them with everything we've got while they're distracted by the explosion." Jake felt sick thinking about it. Lisa would die, along with her crew of 35. But if the plan failed, everyone would die anyway. The attack began at dawn, Earth time, though there was no sun left to mark the hours. Lisa's small fleet moved toward the massive Devourer command ship that floated where New York used to be. The bioship was feeding on the ruins of the city, its tendrils reaching down to consume everything. "All ships, this is Defiance," Lisa broadcast. "Remember, aim for the spots where our weapons have already caused damage. Hit them hard and fast." The human ships opened fire with everything they had. Kinetic cannons, missile batteries, even mining charges converted into improvised bombs. The Devourer bioships reacted with surprise as the primitive weapons tore through their adapted armor. Lisa pushed her engines to maximum power and aimed straight for the command ship's center. Her reactor was already beginning to overload, filling the cruiser with deadly radiation. Her crew stayed at their posts, knowing they were flying toward certain death. "For Earth," Lisa said quietly as the Defiance struck the bioship. The explosion lit up the solar system like a new star. The fusion blast tore through the Devourer command ship and spread outward in a wave of pure energy. For the first time since the invasion began, a major bioship was completely destroyed. But more importantly, the explosion did something unexpected. The other Devourer ships suddenly stopped moving in coordination. They seemed confused, uncertain, as if they had lost their connection to something vital. Jake watched the battle from his hiding place and realized that Lisa had been right. The bioships were connected through some kind of network, and destroying the command vessel had damaged that connection. For a few precious minutes, the Devourers were vulnerable. The surviving human ships pressed their attack, targeting the confused bioships with their kinetic weapons. Several smaller Devourers were destroyed before the swarm could reorganize itself, but the victory was temporary and costly. Lisa was dead, along with most of the human fleet. The Devourers would adapt and rebuild their network. Still, something important had been learned. The enemy could be hurt, and they could be confused. As Jake mourned his friend and mentor, he received another musical transmission. This time, the alien tones were different, more urgent. Someone was trying to communicate with him, and he had a feeling that humanity's fight for survival was about to take a very unexpected turn. Jake Morrison stared at his communication screen, trying to understand the musical sounds coming through his speakers. The alien tones rose and fell like a strange song, but there was a pattern to them. Someone was definitely trying to talk to him. "Danny, can you clean up this signal?" Jake asked his engineer. Danny Walsh worked at the controls for several minutes. Slowly, the musical tones became clearer. There were pauses and rhythms that almost sounded like speech, even though the sounds were nothing like human voices. Then something amazing happened. The alien sounds changed, becoming lower and slower. Jake realized that whoever was sending the message was trying to copy human speech patterns. After a few more tries, words began to form. Human ships we see you fight. Jake's heart pounded. After all the death and destruction, they had finally made contact with another intelligent species. "This is Jake Morrison of the Earthship Aurora. Can you understand me?" The reply came faster this time. "I am Veltar, of the Zephyr Ian survivors. We need to talk." 3 hours later, Jake met the first alien he had ever seen. "Hi, Counselor Veltar appeared on his ship's viewscreen as a tall, thin figure made of living crystal. Her body glowed with soft blue light, and her face was both beautiful and completely inhuman. "Your species surprised us," Veltar said. Her English was getting better as her translation device learned. "We thought you were primitive. We were wrong." Jake felt embarrassed by her words. Compared to the crystal cities he had seen in the Zephyrian databases, human technology did look primitive. "We may be simple, but we can fight. Your energy weapons don't work against these creatures, but our bullets do." "Yes," Veltar agreed. "The Devourers evolved to consume energy. They feed on power itself. But your kinetic weapons are different. They cause physical damage that the bioships cannot easily repair." Over the next few days, Jake learned about the galaxy he had never known existed. The Zephyrians had ruled peacefully for thousands of years, exploring and cataloging worlds. They had found the ruins of many dead civilizations, all destroyed by the same enemy that was now attacking them. "The Devourers are ancient," Veltar explained. "They have consumed entire species before. Each time they grow stronger and smarter. We are probably their greatest meal ever, because our crystal bodies contain so much energy. But the Zephyrians had something humans needed: knowledge. Their databases contained detailed information about devourer behavior and biology. Most importantly, they knew how the bioships communicated with each other. Commander Amy Sullivan, one of the few surviving Earth Defense Force engineers, worked with Zephyrian scientists to understand the enemy network. Amy was a small woman, with dark hair and quick hands. She had been trained to repair human ships, but now she was learning about alien technology beyond her wildest dreams. "It's like a quantum internet," Amy explained to Jake during one of their meetings. "Each bioship is connected to all the others through subspace channels. When one learns something, they all learn it. When one is damaged, the others adapt. The Zephyrians showed the humans how to detect these quantum signals. With the right equipment, they could track devourer communications and even disrupt them. Temporarily working together was not easy at first. Zephyrians lived for thousands of years and made decisions very slowly. Humans were impatient and wanted to act quickly. The crystal beings communicated through harmonic vibrations that human ears could barely hear. Many times, Jake found himself serving as a translator between the two species. "They don't understand why we grieve for the dead," Veltar told Jake. "One day, to them, death is just another change in the pattern of existence. And we don't understand why they take so long to make simple decisions," Jake replied. "But we need each other if we're going to survive this." Captain Ryan Blake became the leader of the Joint Intelligence Operations. His ship, the Phantom, was designed for stealth missions. Ryan was a quiet man with gray hair and steady nerves. He had been a spy before the invasion, gathering information on human colonies. Now he was preparing to spy on aliens that could destroy entire worlds. "The network has weak points," Ryan explained during a strategy meeting. "Command nodes that coordinate large groups of bioships. If we can plant disruption devices at several nodes simultaneously, we might be able to confuse the entire swarm." The plan was incredibly dangerous. Small teams would have to penetrate deep into devourer territory and plant quantum disruptors near the command nodes. The devices would only work for a few minutes, but that might be enough to give the combined fleet a chance to strike. Jake found himself promoted to Admiral of the Resistance Forces. It was a job he had never wanted, commanding ships from two different species in a war he barely understood. But he was one of the few humans who could communicate effectively with the Zephyrians. The joint fleet grew slowly as more survivors joined them. Human cargo ships were converted into weapon platforms. Zephyrian research vessels were equipped with human-designed kinetic cannons. The combination of technologies created weapons that neither species could have built alone. Engineer Amy Sullivan developed hybrid projectiles that combined human metal slugs with Zephyrian power cores. When these weapons hit a bioship, they delivered both physical damage and energy disruption. The Devourers found it much harder to adapt to attacks that worked on multiple levels. "We're learning," Jake told his mixed crew during one of their briefings. "Every battle teaches us something new about how to hurt them." But the Devourers were learning too. They began using smaller, faster bioships that were harder to hit. They developed new armor that could absorb some kinetic impacts. The war was becoming a race between two different kinds of evolution: biological adaptation versus technological innovation. Jake often stood on his ship's bridge, looking out at the strange alliance they had built. Human vessels flew alongside crystal ships, their crews working together despite having no common language or culture. They were united only by the need to survive and the determination to make the Devourers pay for what they had done. The final battle was coming. Intelligence reports showed that the largest concentration of Devourer ships was gathering in the ruins of the Zephyrian homeworld. If the Resistance could strike there with enough force, they might be able to break the bioship network permanently. But Jake knew the cost would be terrible. Most of his ships would not survive the attack. Most of his people would die. Yet it was their only chance to save what remained of both civilizations. The ruins of the Zephyrian homeworld looked like a graveyard in space. Broken crystal cities floated among the debris, their once beautiful lights now dark and cold. But this dead place had become the center of Devourer activity. Thousands of bioships swarmed around the planet, feeding on the energy-rich remains of an ancient civilization. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the enemy force through his viewscreen. His combined fleet of 60 ships looked tiny compared to the massive swarm ahead. Human destroyers flew alongside Zephyrian crystal cruisers, their crews ready for what would probably be their final battle. "All ships report ready, Commander," Amy Sullivan said from her position at the weapons console. She had spent the last month installing hybrid weapon systems on every vessel in the fleet. Human kinetic cannons powered by Zephyrian energy cores, designed to punch through bio-armor and disrupt the alien network. High Counselor Veltar stood beside Jake, her crystal body pulsing with nervous light. "My people built their greatest city on that world," she said quietly. "Now it will become the site of our last stand." The plan was simple but deadly. While the main fleet engaged the Devourer swarm in direct combat, small teams of volunteers would fly straight into the enemy. Formation. Their job was to plant quantum disruptors at key network nodes throughout the bioship fleet. If enough disruptors activated at the same time, the entire swarm would lose coordination. Captain Ryan Blake led the disruption teams. His stealth ship, Phantom, had been modified with the most advanced cloaking technology both species could provide. Behind him flew 11 other small craft, each carrying a quantum disruptor and a crew that knew they were flying to their deaths. "Remember, Jake, broadcast to the entire fleet. We only get one chance at this. The disruptors will only work for a few minutes before the bioships adapt. We have to hit them hard and fast while they're confused." The battle began when the first human missiles struck the outer edge of the Devourer formation. The bioships reacted immediately, turning toward the attacking fleet like a disturbed hive of insects. Their living weapons began charging, preparing to destroy these annoying creatures that had dared to challenge them. Lieutenant Ben Carter piloted his fighter toward the largest bioship in the swarm. The massive creature was easily a mile long, its hull pulsing with veins of dark energy. Ben's hands shook on the controls as acidic secretions from the alien ship began eating through his fighter's armor. "Target in sight," Ben radioed to the fleet, beginning final approach. His fighter was already falling apart around him, the cockpit filled with smoke as systems failed one by one. But Ben kept flying, pushing his dying ship toward the bioship's central nerve cluster. When he was close enough, he activated his quantum disruptor and sent it crashing into the alien hull. "Package delivered," Ben said calmly, just before his fighter dissolved completely. All across the battlefield, similar acts of heroism played out. Human and Zephyrian crews sacrificed themselves to plant the disruptors in exactly the right locations. Captain Ryan Blake managed to deploy 3 devices before his ship was caught by a bioship's feeding tentacles. "Tell my wife I kept my promise," Ryan said into his radio as the Phantom was crushed. Then something wonderful and terrible happened. The quantum disruptors activated all at once, sending waves of interference through the bioship network. For the first time in millions of years, the Devourer swarm lost its coordination. Individual bioships began acting independently, confused and uncertain without their collective consciousness. "Now!" Jake shouted. "All ships, full attack!" The combined fleet opened fire with everything they had. Hybrid weapons tore through. Bioarmor that could no longer adapt quickly enough. Zephyrian energy beams followed human kinetic rounds, creating devastating combination attacks. Bioships that had seemed invincible just minutes before began dying by the hundreds. But the victory came at a terrible cost. The Devourers, even confused and disorganized, were still deadly opponents. Jake watched in horror as ship after ship from his fleet was destroyed. The cruiser Liberty exploded when a bioship wrapped around it. The Zephyrian vessel Starsong was consumed by acid after ramming an enemy command node. Commander Amy Sullivan died when her engineering station exploded during a direct hit. She had been trying to boost power to the weapons when a bioship's energy beam punched through the hull. Her last act was to redirect all remaining power to the main guns. "Amy's down," reported her assistant, "but the weapons are still firing." Jake felt each loss like a physical blow. These were people he had trained with, fought beside, and learned to call friends, but he could not stop to grieve. The battle was far from over. High Counselor Veltar coordinated the Zephyrian ships with calm efficiency, even as her own vessel took heavy damage. "The network disruption is weakening," she warned Jake. "The bioships are beginning to reconnect. We have perhaps 5 more minutes." Those 5 minutes determined the fate of the galaxy. The combined fleet concentrated all their firepower on the largest bioships, the ones that served as primary network nodes. Without these command vessels, the smaller Devourers would be unable to coordinate their attacks effectively. The final push cost Jake half his remaining ships. But when the smoke cleared, the Devourer swarm was broken. Those bioships that had not been destroyed were fleeing toward the galactic rim, their network too damaged to support coordinated action. Jake Morrison stood on his battered bridge and watched the enemy retreat. Of the 60 ships that had entered the battle, only 8 remained functional. Earth's population had been reduced from 8 billion to scattered groups of survivors on distant colonies. The Zephyrian civilization lay in ruins, their crystal. Cities dark and empty, but they had one. The Devourers were defeated, driven back to whatever dark corner of space had spawned them. The galaxy was safe, at least for now. In the months that followed, Jake worked with the surviving Zephyrians to establish early warning systems throughout their territories. Human colonies and crystal cities were rebuilt side by side, protected by joint defense fleets. The two species had learned that survival sometimes required unexpected friendships. Jake often stood on the observation deck of the new space station they had built where Earth used to orbit. The planet was slowly healing, its surface being restored by advanced Zephyrian technology. Children played in the corridors, both human and crystal-born, growing up in a galaxy where cooperation had replaced isolation. We thought we were alone. Jake said to Veltar during one of their meetings. Both our species believed we were the only intelligent life in the universe. Perhaps, Veltar replied, her crystal form glowing softly. We needed to nearly lose everything to discover that we were stronger together than we ever were apart. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries. There might be other threats out there, other challenges to face. But Jake Morrison had learned something important in the war against the Devourers. No species, no matter how advanced or primitive, had to face the darkness alone.